Okay, so with that said, I'm just going to run through from the top just to remind everybody the goal here is to get you guys to think like a C-level marketer. So, what we're not going to be talking about is tactics and campaigns, deep dives into functional activities, and cosmetic things that a lot of marketing courses do teach you. We're going to be focusing primarily on the C-level marketing topics, strategic concepts that actually drive enterprise value, and things that'll help you interface with boards and level up in your career as you go here. So that's the objective, and we'll try to keep it to that level for almost everything. Um, Today's topic is on product marketing. Like I mentioned, tomorrow's demand generation, and this is where the course kind of starts to pivot into the actual strategic work and implementation work of a lot of the things that we have set the stage for so far. I'd say weeks 1 to 3 are really about understanding the context, understanding the reality of the businesses that we're operating in. But then now we're heading into how do we actually generate enterprise value? And this one in particular is near and dear to my heart. Like when I first started this business, I started it from the angle of demand generation because that is the topic that everybody likes to talk about. It's top of mind for everybody, and it's really demand generation is about pipeline creation and driving more revenue, right? But for me, as I've built this business, it's becoming more and more apparent that product marketing is the first and most important growth lever available to a business. And when I was first coming up in my marketing career, I would say I was a demand generation expert. But as I've built this business, this is an area where I have developed a lot of expertise, and we've been able to create a ton of value for the companies that we work with. But even when we work in engagements, we don't get to do as much of this as I would like. It's very rare for me to find a company that is exceptional at product marketing. There might be some of you on the call that actually have really good product marketing organizations, which is great. But in general, I don't find people that have really nailed this to the degree that it can be nailed. And that gap, I think, is the difference between a good marketer and a great marketer. And so just to define it a little bit more distinctly, to me, product marketing is what sets the table for the whole company. We often come across companies, like I met a company yesterday that has grown from 3 million 12 months ago to 7 million this year. Just kind of like an overnight success, just because they nailed product market fit. And just through word of mouth and referrals, they're scaling like crazy, even though they're not spending all that much on marketing. And product marketing is such a critical part of product market fit, and also how you resonate inside of a marketplace. And so that's kind of what I want to like leave you guys here with is, as you think about your respective companies, how can you become the preeminent organization in your specific industry so that you have higher referral rates and just organic growth beyond just the tactical of like we tweaked this paid media campaign here or we created a new piece of content. I really want you to resonate with the market. And I took a course a long time ago called Product Pragmatic Marketing. This is when I was leading a product organization, and just to get some of the foundational pieces in place. And some of you may have taken it. And one of the first things they talk about is that the building is full of product experts, but what companies really need are market experts. And the more you have market experts in the room, the more you can actually build an organization that resonates with that market and actually grows a lot faster. So that's some exposition just to kind of set the stage here, but we're going to dive a lot deeper into this, and I have a ton of examples to kind of walk through. And a lot of this content I've actually ever shared in any format, not on LinkedIn, not on speaking. So we're going to get to go through some cool stuff today. So as a starting point, this is baseline. We understand this, that the better you are at product marketing, the more all your metrics improve. You have better funnel efficiency, better gross margins, higher LTV, net revenue retention, et cetera, and then also higher NPS. And you can see that some of these things connect to the work that we talked about in the TAM and segmentation section in particular. And it's kind of like a chicken and egg situation where if you have a good understanding of who your ICP is, then all of these things will be true and your product marketing will focus on those folks. But the value of product marketing is that you can also open up markets and improve these numbers, and they kind of feed each other as a cycle. And so we kind of want to do a little bit of both to get organizations to a good place, and especially as you extend into adjacencies and other places inside of a market. But as a basic process, and there are a lot of good marketers on the call, so just you guys understand this, that it starts with customer analysis. You understand the market, you understand their pain points. That should drive product development and what you're actually focusing on and how you're going to actually solve those pain points, which should then drive the positioning and messaging based on the pain points. So it's not based on features, it's based on benefits, like standard marketing stuff that you've probably heard your whole life. And then finally, that all the positioning and messaging that you do shows up in your product marketing assets and your sales enablement assets. Like another way to kind of visualize it is the ICP work that we did, personas, verticals, industries, all of that, you kind of put it together in your messaging and positioning, and then that gets disseminated through your website, sales enablement content, content marketing, demand gen, etc. And one thing I preach to companies often is that when you think about content, a lot of companies think about assets that will drive demand. So they'll think about something that they can use to run paid media programs on social or SEO content that'll help them rank for a term. And those tactics are important, but they don't have some of this foundational work done. And really the first domino that has to fall is product marketing. So I'm always kind of beating this drum of like, is your product marketing handled? Do you have the right fundamental assets in place to communicate the value you bring to your ideal customer and how you're actually going to help them resolve that, and also how to expand those accounts or retain those accounts and everything else. And then you can start to think about other things that come more downstream. But given the nature of this, like I think people on this call kind of understand this, but I want to flip it on its head a little bit, which is that everything is product marketing. And you could do this only with 2 or 3 things in marketing. You can do it with demand gen, you can do it with content, and you could do it with product marketing. But product marketing, it's most true for product marketing, because whatever you do with product marketing influences everything that comes out of your marketing organization. There's nothing else that you can actually say that for inside your marketing function. Your content is a subset of product marketing. Your demand gen is a subset of product marketing. And so nailing this is the key to success in almost everything. And if we think about how we end up interacting with a customer, it's at the end of the day, whatever the format is, whether it's video, whether it's a website, whether it's a salesperson talking to them, at the end of the day, it's content. And what is the message or the copy or the information that customer is interacting with? And just some examples, right? It'll show up on your marketing site. It'll show up in your sales enablement materials. People understand these things, especially if they're marketed, you understand these, but it actually also shows up in your help and support and customer success work, like your help articles, your help site, in product, live chat. It shows up in videos that might be in product, whatever's on YouTube and things like that, you understand. It shows up in interactive content like webinars and demos and walkthroughs and sandboxes. It shows up in market on review sites, like what you define as your product marketing might be how you get categorized on a Gartner quadrant, or how it's being ranked on Capterra or any one of these places. It'll show up in how you nurture these customers through different stages. And most importantly, it's going to show up inside your product. And this is a repeated box. Ignore that. We have to fix that. But in product, when all the different features that are being released, like what I find, ineffective product teams will have a product roadmap of items that they want to create. But if you have great product marketing that understands the market, the product marketing should almost be influencing what's next on the product roadmap. And I can give a personal story from this. When we were building Wild Apricot, the main way we would define what would be next on the product roadmap is something we call the wish list. And the wish list was everything that existing customers have uploaded as the next feature that they want. And so they would upload different things, like we were a membership management platform. So it's like, what we want the ability to charge customers for this, or we need this little tweak to a little module inside a separate area of the product, or the website module needs to be improved, etc. But as we went on, we started to really lean into education and training these folks on how to build bigger nonprofits and bigger associations. And through that messaging, it became important to prioritize features that would actually help the organizations grow. And that's something that the product team was less focused on, because they were being more reactive to customer requests. So whatever that is for your organization, you need to kind of start to think that through, because what you're selling and what you're messaging needs to work very closely hand in hand. And the idea is that good product marketing is not an accident. When you come across a company that is exceptional at messaging, positioning, that's distinct in the marketplace, there's a ton of effort that has gone into that to communicate that message across all channels in a way that is valuable, relevant, urgent, and makes the customer feel like this is important enough that I need to invest into this. There's probably things that you encounter, especially as marketers. The MarTech space is huge. There are some companies that are very good at convincing you that their product needs to be prioritized internally as something that you invest in to add into your tech stack. And there's other products that are not good at that, right? So an example in recent years, a company that did this well is 6sense, where ABM was all the rage and everybody started buying 6sense in order to do that. And there's a ton of other ABM tools out there that weren't taken up as much as 6sense. So figuring out what is that distinction is super important. And I want to just give you guys one big example. And I have multiple companies in here, but Zendesk is a company that I think nails this really well. And over the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months, AI obviously has exploded, but this concept of agents and agents in support and AI in support and not needing support, like there's some companies who have eliminated the support teams to just run AI-based call centers or address support tickets and et cetera. So I wanted to show how Zendesk is approaching this, because they see this, it's a real opportunity and threat in this domain. And you can start to see that it shows up everywhere. Like AI first customer service is the first thing that you see when you end up on the homepage. When you go in product, you see AI agents in action as part of their walkthrough. And then they have other stuff that's also helpful. When you go on their blog, everything is about AI. AI in finance, AI in e-commerce, AI in healthcare. And then when you look at their customer stories, it's all about how this company is. These are the first case studies. They help companies without AI as well. But because AI is a priority, it is being messaged and it's in every aspect of the business. And so coming back to this concept of everything is product marketing, just using this image earlier, this was just inside the marketing domain, but the idea is that it's actually cross-domain inside the organization. It's about product, marketing, sales, CS, and engineering. All of these functions are actually contributing to and need input from product marketing in terms of what they need to work on. And as I should change these two things to say that these are bi-directional cues that are going back and forth between product marketing and what these departments are actually working on. And so you could theoretically change priorities for CS as an example based on the messaging and positioning that's out there in the market. In fact, you can theoretically, you should. And inside, if you were to think about it as a small company, excuse me, let's say you were a small business that's less than 5 million in revenue, it's founder led, this work is being done by the founder. So the founder is the bi-directional communication point between all departments and the message that's going out to the market. So the founder is the market expert. They're the ones understanding what the pain points are, and then going to different departments saying, in order to be consistent to deliver this message, here's what you, and to provide the value that we're promising, because the market is expecting us to deliver on this promise. Here's what I need from engineering. Here's what I need from CS. Here's what I need from sales. Here's what I need from product. What I find is that inside companies, product marketing is actually sandbox, not sandbox, they're kind of fenced, right? So it's like product marketing, your job is when we release a feature, you will then go and build a series of articles that promote that feature. When we launch a new product, you will then go build a series of web pages that explains what the product does. This is, I would say, 95 to 99% of product marketing organizations. And it is like de facto wrong, because so much opportunity is left on the table because of that workflow. What you actually want to start off with is by saying, what is the unique and distinct value we bring to the marketplace? How do we want to message that to the market so that we stand out? And then what needs to happen inside each of these departments to deliver on that, to give that feedback to say your roadmap needs to be adjusted. And so that discipline, if it's misunderstood by the CEO, if it's misunderstood by the chief product officer, or misunderstood by the head of customer success, you end up having this misalignment in customer experience because the customer doesn't care who's actually doing this work. So the customer will hear whatever message you have to say, and then one day be in your product and have this mismatch. Or if you're offering a service, experience a service that's mismatched from what you've promised. And so the alignment of promise and delivery needs to happen, and somebody needs to do that. And my belief is this cannot be done by product alone. This has to be done with marketing. So when we talk about content, we're going to talk about how content is part of your product. In this case, like product marketing is the product. Like product marketing and product are intertwined. You cannot separate the two. And marketing needs to lead that charge. And I'll use a personal example just from our side here is we talk a lot about C-level marketing expertise here at How to SaaS. This program is called C-level marketing. There are a ton of marketing agencies out there, but how we position ourselves is we are a C-level marketing partner for private equity firms and CEOs, excuse me. And so our buyer is the CEO or the investor. Whereas most agencies, because there's so many senior marketers in the room, most agencies, you're the buyer. You guys all make the purchasing decisions. You go up to the CEO and you say, I want to hire this firm. I need this much budget. And then the CEO or the CFO approves it or disapproves it. So, but because we have positioned ourselves in this way and we talk to the PE investor and the CEO in that way, the sale process is very different. So we play in a very different marketplace than all the other agencies. And then the value we bring is also different because for example, we don't do execution work. We primarily do strategy consulting work, marketing due diligence work, but it's all about educating people that are at that CEO or investor level to say that your revenue problem is a marketing problem. Here's why marketing is important. Here's why you need to invest more. Here's why your marketing team needs more budget. And as we're educating them, like light bulbs go off in a way that maybe they're not getting from their marketing leader. And then we're brought in as their C-level partner to work with their marketing team to optimize their organizations, right? So that kind of changes what our services element is as well, because before I skip forward, because on our services side, we don't hire junior marketers. We hire director level, VP level, C-level folks that can come and deliver on that promise. Like imagine if we had this great message going out to the market, we have inbound customers coming in, but then the marketers on the team were all, first year, second year type of marketers, we would be unable to deliver on that promise. But that would, as silly as that sounds, that's something that happens inside companies all the time because you think it's the most amazing product when you look at their marketing website, and then you go into the product and you're like, this is not what I expected. I expected it to be easier. Like easy is a great example of something that companies say. They'll say, we're quicker, faster, cheaper, easier. Like these are the kinds of basic benefits that people outline. And then you get in there and it's actually not fast. It's actually not easier. It's actually the opposite in a lot of cases. And so that mismatch creates a ton of tension in terms of customer experience. And then all of our marketing that comes out from that flows in that way. Like I could write 5, 10 other types of marketing books, but we have specifically focused on these kinds of books and assets because it speaks to the ICP. And so that's why in a way, the TAM and segmentation work that we've done is kind of like an orphaned idea without this component. They kind of go they're very tightly intertwined. As you understand your ICP in different markets, the message and the positioning and everything needs to come together with that. In the case of this course, because we only have an hour, we've kind of split these ideas, but the better you are at connecting that message back to those ICPs that we defined last week, the easier it'll be. I'm going to skip this slide. I've walked you guys through that. But the idea is that as we kind of get better at this, we establish a more distinct and defensible position in the marketplace. So if you think about your respective companies, there are probably 3 to 5 major, maybe if you're a smaller market, like it might be 1 or 2, but in general, 3 to 5 major players in every single market. And over time, they all end up looking the same, right? Like if I was to ask you guys, what are the top 5 project management software tools out there? You would list Jira, you would list Asana, you would list Monday, you would list Trello, right? And you start to go down the list and Rike, you would list all these companies that in effect do the same thing. You can manage projects, you can tag team members, you can have tasks, you can have subtasks, you can have epic projects, and you can connect things together. It's all the same thing. So how do you distinguish yourself in a market where there's feature parity? And that's where I'm saying that if you fence product marketing to just the idea of promoting product capabilities, it will never sound different. Because if we were the product marketer for Jira, we would have the same set of features to promote as we would at Asana. And so I could move companies and I would basically be creating the same piece of content, which is completely wrong and is leaving a ton of money on the table. So think about that for your companies. Like, how many assets have you created from a product marketing standpoint that are just kind of like permission to play type of content? It's content that everybody has access to, or any type of good content or decent content marketer could create. That is not going to distinguish you in the marketplace. And I would say that this problem is one of the reasons why revenue doesn't grow faster, because we haven't done the harder part of actually creating distinction in the marketplace. And so just to give you like some structure and trying to understand this, and some of this is foundational work that has to be done no matter what. Like every company needs a marketing website that looks a certain way. So that stuff you have to do. But then every company also needs to create distinction, which is work that doesn't get done. So I want to talk about the distinction stuff, but I also want to make sure, because there are other marketers in this course as well, that you have some of the foundational work. So at a base level, the best fit customers that we talked about, you want to make sure you have the right positioning and messaging for them. And then you want to make sure that that's going across all your assets on your website, your email, your sales enablement work, or whatever it is that you do. And then you want to do personas and ICP work. I'm sure people here have done all kinds of things like this. I don't need to teach you the basics, but just high level understanding who are the different users, buyers, influencers, that when it comes time to make a purchasing decision, what are their goals and objectives? What would their objections be? What are their challenges? And this is just an example from my book that kind of shows how you can outline that if you are interested in digging deeper. And then you want to adjust out which features and benefits are most relevant to the market that you're targeting. So in this example, and this is the example in my book, Exit Ready Marketing, is they were previously targeting anybody that needed project management software. And later it was pivoted to anybody that's in a professional services industry that needs to do project management for their complex engagements. And the features might be similar in some cases, but very different in others, where on the left side, it's more project and task management. On the right side, it's things like time tracking and invoicing and resource planning. And based on that, you'll see that your right to win changes even against the same competitors, right? So if you look at your win rates, and we talked about win rates, I think in week 2, across different types of customers or different industries, you will find that you lose to certain competitors more when it's a bad fit customer than a good fit customer. And knowing what those verticals and segments are and why you win more often against which competitor will help you understand if you're targeting the right audience or not. But more importantly, what you want to do is carve out a portion of the market where you have a significant advantage. So one of my favorite business books ever written is called Blue Ocean Strategy. And it just talks about this idea that your entire approach to an organization can create an area of the market where you actually are not competing with anybody. And whereas a red ocean would be somewhere where things are commoditized and there's hyper competition. So if I was just to Google right now, sales enablement software, it's almost a guarantee that Seismic, HubSpot, Showpad are the first 3 ads. And they're all bidding $50 a click and paying through the nose to get that visibility, right? That to me is a red ocean. They have to play that game. If you were to kind of think about it from a game theory optimal standpoint, that's a costs that they have to take to play in the sales enablement software marketplace. Another example would be like if you go to a big trade show in your specific industry, there'll be 3 to 5 players that have the biggest booths. And it's one of the logic reasons I hear is that we need to show the market that we're one of the bigger players, so we're going to pay for a bigger booth. But if everybody in your market knows that that's the play, and everybody is at that event, then everybody's doing the same thing. And everybody's giving out the same tchotchkes and has sales reps there and is having side dinners with clients, and everybody's doing that. So you're all growing basically at the rate the market is growing. So if the market grows at 10%, you will likely grow at 10%. If you're the $30 million company, you're going to add $3 million in revenue. If you're a $3 million company, you're going to add 300,000 in revenue, which is fine. We still have to do that work. But the alpha, if using investor language, like if you want to generate alpha in a market, so if a market is growing 10%, how do you grow 15% or 20%? That is where the real value is created. And as marketers, like I meet so many good marketers that don't understand that. Is like you could be an exceptional marketer that's good at growing a business at the overall market rate, but you may not be at all a good marketer at generating alpha on top of that. And what I want you guys to think about is what are the things that you can do to generate alpha in a marketplace despite whatever the market growth rate would be. And that means, and product marketing is a really big part of that, which is creating distinction, creating separation, or standing out almost like iconically or uniquely from everybody else so that you get a disproportionate portion of the market that is available, and also a portion of the market that is unavailable because they're going to kind of flock to you because you speak their language or you fit them in a different way. And I'll just use a personal story or personal example. Is in the last 18 to 24 months, marketing agencies have lost a ton of business. I have a bunch of friends that own marketing agencies, and a lot of them have had churned clients, lost recurring clients, or at least had the retainers shrink significantly, and their businesses have actually contracted by 20, 30, in some cases over 50%. And so they're really struggling. They've had to lay off a lot of people. In our case, based on everything that I've explained earlier about our business, we've actually grown by 30%. So if you think about that, that's a net delta of like 60% if you were to go 30 minus 30 versus plus 30. And that's because of the blue ocean strategy of focusing on private equity and our messaging and the positioning. That may not seem possible in your marketplace, but I can almost guarantee that it is. So if the market growth rate is 10%, it's quite possible to grow at 20% or 30% or 50%. It's just about figuring out how or what are the components involved in order to do that. So I'll keep chugging along because a lot of stuff to get through. So the way to do this, at least in my opinion, I'm going to show you guys examples in a second, but your customer is the hero. This is actually the first drawing I ever made. So it's probably the worst in terms of writing and actual structure, but the idea is that your customer has certain pain points. You're moving them to dreams and aspirations and goals, and your messaging needs to capture this journey. They're the hero. That's the story. And you are going to help them get away from all of this and to all of this. And without you, they may not be able to do it, or they may not be able to do it as fast, or they may not be able to do it as well. And you're basically the guide. So you look at it as like there's a pain point, you want to diagnose it, and you want to give a prescription. And the better you are at diagnosing and prescribing and converting that into your positioning and messaging so that they see you as the guide and the messenger that they need to hear from, the faster your growth rate will be. And there's no way to put this in an attribution software, unfortunately. Either you have this or you don't. And so really nailing this is one of the key elements, and that's why we have to use examples, because I can't give you a formula on how to do that. But at the very least, you need some sort of a messaging house, and this is a concept I would assume a lot of you have understood, but it's grow your services firm faster would be like the ultimate goal for this company that we're using as our example. And there might be 3 elements of that. We want to increase revenue and profitability. We want to have world-class operations, and there needs to be clarity and transparency with the client in terms of how you're performing, and also you need to understand how efficient your organization is. And then from there, here's where we get the benefits. Like you have better budgeting and forecasting, improved cash flow management, better utilization, et cetera, whatever your benefits would be. And then underneath this, I could then add a layer that says, these are the actual features. We have time tracking, we have invoicing, et cetera, et cetera. So whatever that is for your market, build some version of this messaging house, and it will actually allow you to at least do the base level product marketing and also start to elevate the conversation to some of this pain point diagnostic prescription antidote type of formula that we're talking about. A really good example of this is a company called Jobber out here in Canada. It's been growing like crazy. And I went to I went through a bunch of companies that I respect, and I was like trying to find examples. And this one really resonated with me because this homepage on the left, it looks kind of heroic, right? It just looks like people that are actually at work doing something difficult. They're obviously standing on a roof, doing something hard that not everybody could do. And then the benefit statement is there's win more jobs and get more jobs done right. Doesn't say that it's a field service management software. They're now working to optimize their H1 title tag to get this page ranked on Google. It doesn't say anything about features. It's purely about the top of the messaging house. In this case, it was grow your professional firm faster. In this case, it's about winning more jobs as a field service management company, right? And the picture we kind of talked about. And then they talk about how they serve over 50 industries. And if you scroll down on the page, you can kind of see what are all the industries that can really benefit from using Jobber. But this part of the page relates to the TAM and segmentation work. So they know that these are the kinds of industries that have high net revenue retention and win business, and what are their pain points. And all of their pain points are likely similar because they have this as their central objective in terms of whatever they're doing. And then if you start digging deeper, everything else that they do is to enable the goal of winning more jobs and making sure you do the job right. So they have a podcast called the Masters of Home Service. They have a community where you can ask questions about how to fulfill that objective. And then they talk about all kinds of little things as well inside that community. And then they also create industry reports on why Gen Z, more of them are actually taking up blue collar jobs, or they would be happier in blue collar jobs because there's a ton of money that can be made in this space. And then finally, they have other products or tools to help these people. Like this one on the right is they talk about their marketing tools inside the software, because that's one of the major pain points. If I'm running a yard service business, I may not be the best marketer. I may not know what to do. So their tool allows them to provide that to me, that I may not have that knowledge. And that's an example of what I talked about earlier. Is there's almost, I don't know their history, but I can almost guarantee that the MVP or version 1 of Jobber did not include this module. And so somewhere along the line, it was uncovered that even if somebody comes on Jobber, they're unable to find clients. And we need to help. If we come back to the top of the brand promise here is win more jobs and get more jobs done right. If they can't win more jobs, there's nothing to get done right. So somebody figured that out and said, we need to develop tools for these people. And then that was put back on the site as the message again. So that feedback loop is turning. And so that kind of brings me back again to this point, which is everything is product marketing, and your role in this piece of the puzzle is critical, because without that feedback, this never gets created. And they're never able to kind of figure out how to actually help these people succeed or improve their retention and all those kinds of things. And as you get your core messaging and positioning right, everything else becomes easier, right? So this framework that I talked about, your website, sales enablement, content, like everybody needs to do this stuff. So like as an essential website structure, you need a section for features, section for solutions, section for the industries you serve, and a section for case studies. You may have other things, but as a base level, you need this product marketing work for almost any business. You could just swap out the pages. So if you were to think about we meet companies that don't have any of these pages built. Maybe they have just one features page, one solutions page, but maybe they don't have any industry pages or vice versa. And so thinking about where are those gaps to have some of those essential assets created. And then the same thing on the sales enablement side, do you have sales materials I'm fixing the slide. Do you have sales materials that actually support all the different verticals that you're going after? And making sure that, and that's not just like battle cards, it's like all types of sales assets. It could be the sales decks, the sales scripts, objection handling. One of the things, objection handling is probably one of the most underlooked at assets, because the best fit customer is already in front of you. You're on a demo, you pitch what you can do, and they ask you a hard question. And a lot of companies do not have answers to the hard questions documented, and they don't have reps trained. And it should be by vertical, because you're going to ask different kinds of questions. And so this becomes a very obvious optimization to kind of focus on. And then the final one is just content journeys and nurture campaigns, and building that for all the different ICPs and verticals that we've kind of talked about. And then finally, I'd just say is that what we just ran through the last few slides is like foundational stuff. You have to do it anyways. But more importantly, the stuff that we've been talking about up to that point is to build an iconic position in the marketplace. That is what's actually going to help you drive alpha. So I'm going to just give you a framework to kind of think about this from. And if you think about some of the biggest companies that you follow, or people that you would, or like companies for whom you would always pull out your wallet and buy basically anything that they have to sell you, you'll find that they have this type of iconic positioning. And I'm not talking about companies like Apple, because everybody kind of talks about that. That's different. I'd say like think more B2B. Think about the types of companies that can almost always convince you to invest in something that they're doing. It's because they have established this type of position in the marketplace. So a way to kind of visualize this is everything under this blue bar here, where I say your product, coming back to just a singular pain point diagnostic prescription. That's like just one singular thing that you solve, right? But you can actually scale this up and think about what are all the different pain points that you solve for as a product, and you can have different types of prescriptions for each and every single one, and that connects to your messaging house. People that are good at product marketing stop here. They actually do a phenomenal job of communicating all this stuff, and then the business continues to grow, and you can kind of take it from 5 million to upwards of 100 million by just focusing on that. So more power to that. I think that needs to be done. But I think the truly iconic companies go way above and beyond, because if, let's say, your product solves 20 things for a particular customer, there are probably another 80 things. It's a 20-80 rule, where another 80 things that are pain points for your ICP that keeps them up at night, that they really struggle with, that they need help with, that no one is actually helping them solve. And so the iconic companies understand that, and then they figure out what are all those pain points and how to solve it in a different way. And the better you get at this piece, the more likely you are to build that type of a position in the marketplace. And it doesn't always have to be for money, by the way. Some of it can be free, because that's just value you're bringing by existing in this environment or ecosystem as a valuable player, right? So like, for example, when I create my content on LinkedIn, there's nothing I get back from that, but it adds value. That's kind of simple to understand. But as you get to a higher value business or higher size business, the number of critical pain points are actually endless. And you need help from product. You need help from sales. You need help from other departments to actually address those pain points. So I'm going to show you guys a bunch of different examples. And I would say this is probably, if you leave with anything, it's figure out how to do this inside your companies, because it may not affect your growth rate in the near term, but long term, it will skyrocket the business, because companies that do this right almost inevitably outpace market growth. So I'd say there's 8, I thought of more, but just to keep it simple, there's 8 ways to build this kind of positioning to become a household name. So one is expertise. Everybody kind of understands that, whether you have a founder brand or you're really good at education. 2 is entertainment. Entertainment is heavily underutilized and can actually help you cut through the noise on social, because everybody's kind of educating on social as an example. But if you're humorous or wildly entertaining, or you create content that's distinct from everything else out there, you can actually stand out quite a bit. Third is tools, providing free tools that extend beyond your core platform. Fourth would be infrastructure that allows your customer to solve additional problems that they're experiencing. Fifth is experiences. Sixth is communities. Seventh is marketplaces, and eight is ecosystems. And you'll see some similarities between these. Like sometimes the community is the experience, or the ecosystem is the marketplace, or vice versa. But there are differences in certain situations. So I kind of wanted to highlight those and give you guys some examples. So first example, this is a company I admire for sure. It's 37 Signals, Jason Fried, and these guys have done a phenomenal job. And they've written 2 books that have nothing to do with project management. The first one is called Rework, and it's just talking about it changed the way people thought about work. And it came out, I think, early 2010 or 2008, something like that. And then they came out with a second book called Remote. And again, it is not directly related to project management. You can add in the fact that in order to have a remote team, you need better project management software. And so you should use Basecamp. So that's like a few degrees removed. But it was really about running remote companies. I read this book in 2016, and that was one of the reasons why our business is remote, because it really advocated for, you have all this fixed cost going to rent that you don't need in a lot of cases if you can set up other systems. And then the third one is the fact that, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the programming language Ruby on Rails was invented by the CTO of 37 Signals. And so it's a framework that a lot of development teams use now, and it was created inside this company. And with that comes a ton of authority and expertise, and just, you have this like almost halo effect inside this organization. So if you are a developer and you learn from DHH, or you follow them on Twitter, like if you think about, you need project management software, you might use Basecamp over Jira just because you follow DHH, right? And so thinking about stuff like that, and I don't think any of this was on purpose, by the way. Sometimes companies become iconic just because they do things randomly that end up becoming iconic. But we can learn from this case study and say, how can we think about what we do differently to create that type of a position? Another one is just completely separate from B2B, but the number of views Mr. Beast gets from all the different types of content, I'm sure people on this call have seen his videos. And then they've launched actual consumable goods and other things that are going on with those videos that have had tremendous amount in terms of sales and revenue. I'm not saying that we need to go build a consumable brand now, but more just that, how can we layer in entertainment into the content that we're producing that's just beyond a standard demo video or standard webinar, and to build that type of a position. Next example is Square. They have obviously paid terminals and things that you can buy, like these kinds of things when you're out there shopping, you've seen everywhere. But if you look at other products listed on their site, so many of these things are just free. You can have a virtual terminal for free. You can have a Square POS for free. You can have invoicing for free. A lot of these features are features that people on other SaaS companies or other platforms charge for. And their model is, we're taking a share of payments revenue and all that, which I understand. But just the point is that inside your market, there are going to be products and tools that you can offer for free that get them to flock to what you're offering. And then you'll still have things that you can sell, but it's having the right business model and the right marketing to kind of go along with that. Next one is on the infrastructure side, and AWS is like infamous or famous for this, is they've built this ecosystem of tools beyond just the hosting services that they provide through AWS that attracts developers to use AWS over other competitors in the marketplace. And even though Microsoft and Azure and all these kinds of competitors exist, a lot of people go to AWS because they were the ones that were kind of pioneering this. Next is community and events and experiences. So in terms of experience, this is Dreamforce from a couple of weeks ago, and it looks like Disney World. Like this is like entering Disney World somewhere, but it's not. It's a SaaS conference, and a lot of people go, even though Salesforce as a product has basically been the same product for 20 years. There's additional bells and whistles, and you need to kind of figure out how to customize it and things like that. But in general, it's the same product. But people go to learn things, and the software has enabled the community through the experience. And so in your case, I know everybody holds an annual summit and everything. One way to do it is as just like your user summit, but another is to turn it into an experience. And an experience doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to look like a theme park, but you can do it in other ways to kind of foster those connections. Next one is the community side, a more focused effort at least. Given we're talking about product marketing, this is a product marketing network that I think if people want to join, I would recommend it. I know a bunch of people that are a part of it. And it has a huge community of product marketers, and there's certifications and courses, and you get benefits, and there are actual local events that you can be a part of, and you end up becoming a part of, and then they can always sell stuff if they want to later on, but the community is the point of it. And there's actually been a trend of SaaS companies buying communities because of the loyalty associated with the communities. You've probably seen a few examples of this already. And so instead of necessarily going and buying it in your market, there may not be a community yet. How can you create that place where your ICP congregates and learns from each other? And then the last couple of examples, just one is Airtable, just showing that Airtable, Shopify, these kinds of companies all have an extensive app marketplace, but that means getting developers bought in on the idea that they need to develop for your platform and actually prioritize it on their content roadmap. And they've convinced a bunch of companies to design things for Airtable, without which Airtable would probably struggle to compete with things like Monday or Smartsheet and other alternatives in the market. So because they have those plugins and other tools that can be added on top of Airtable, that increases the value of the platform and the retention associated with that. And then finally, I want to talk about just HubSpot as the example of the ecosystem, which is that tools like HubSpot, Shopify, Salesforce, etc., cannot exist without the ecosystem of partners around it. And it also helps customers be more successful. So if you use HubSpot and you have an implementation partner, they'll likely get you onboarded on the software much faster, and you're going to find your first success sooner as well. So it helps HubSpot to be the place where these people kind of come together. And it also helps the people that are the implementation partners build a legitimate business, earn a living, etc. So for your company, how can you create an ecosystem where other people's livelihoods are being improved based on you creating that ecosystem? And so I'm not saying you need to do all of these things. Just coming back here to kind of wrap this up, I'm more saying that these are ways in which you can alleviate these pain points. And for your business, it might just be adding one of those things, or expanding something that you're already doing. And so the simplest form might be just expertise and more thought leadership and stuff like that. But to the nth degree, that might mean creating something like Dreamforce, right? So depending on your size, it's more about thinking through what are those avenues available to you, and then funneling that back into product and sales and customer success and everything else. So to finish off or to close it off, I'll just say is that the more iconic your product marketing is, the more pipeline you're going to generate. So that's ultimately the objective that everybody wants. But thinking about it in terms of that, how much alpha are we generating on top of what's actually possible in the market if you do the very basic amount of product marketing? That's really the goal. So I want you guys to really think about that for your respective companies. And with that said, that's this week's session. So I'll stop there and I'll just say a couple of things. One is, as homework, think through something that's always helped me is whenever I'm building a company, I think about what is one proxy company that is doing what I would like to be doing for this business from a product marketing standpoint, and I would like to model our business after in our space. And so for your company, what does that company look like? It might be Salesforce, but it might be something completely obscure and much smaller. So thinking through that it's a way to kind of unlock some additional opportunities or way of thinking to figure out where some of those opportunities are. So think about that, and you can email me or we can talk about that on one of the office hours sessions as well. And with that said, I will open it up to questions. I see there's a bunch in the chat already, so we can start there. And please feel free to add stuff. And if you guys want to come off mute and also ask it over video, that's totally cool too. Okay, so Andy asks, how does product marketing work when you have multiple ones or a mix of product and service? I can see how we can do these exercises for each one, and at least I assume that that would be the right way to go. But how do you tie it all together since it's all under one company? This is a great question. I love this question. So I'll come back up here. So you are right that you want to do this, like this type of work for each individual business first. And almost treating it as an individual business unit and thinking about what would be the right way to go to market with this thing. Now, what happens inside platform companies is you might have 2 or 3 business units that kind of overlap. They're all servicing the same customer or have a similar solution. So you can kind of bunch them together and try to build something like this that's more unified for those. But let's say there are distinctions between each business unit or area, then you need multiple versions of this. And then what you need is you need an overarching messaging house or a message for this market to explain how all of it kind of comes together. But in general, you won't be able to just drive demand for all the brands by doing that work. It's almost like, I call that like almost corporate marketing work. It's rare. I don't want to say rare, but it's much more difficult to message out for the holding company, if you will, and then have your ICPs flock to the holding company's website, find the separate product lines, and then drive revenue for each of those. It's much easier to think about it as business units. And then you invest into the holding company's messaging and positioning, which will grow over time. I can just use one example of one of our clients who is also one of our students here. This is Fortra. It's one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world. They used to be called Help Systems. They made a ton of acquisitions, and then they rebranded to Fortra, and they've been investing into this platform and the brand that's the corporate brand for last, what, year and a half or so. I think Ashley's on the call. So you can do that, but individually, the products have their own demand gen engines and all of that needs a ton of investment. So yeah, shout out to Fortra. They've done a great job of this, but it takes a lot of work to turn now Fortra into the pipeline generator for all the different product lines as well. So it's safer to start at an individual brand level. Alex asks, how do you think about the balance the trade-offs of running the playbook on the current position slash message at the point where you're internally updated it or it's outdated and can be improved? Essentially, you're running a marketing engine on old positioning. Right. So this work has to be done in parallel. And that's why I talked about standard playbook stuff, because like website structure or like just disseminating standard positioning through your core assets can be done without disrupting things. So I would still keep that going, and you can opportunistically update things. You don't need to nail like exactly what your headline is on every page for the positioning and messaging to resonate. The real alpha is created by doing this kind of work. So the parallel work stream is whatever the standard stuff we're doing, let's do it and update it as we go. But the parallel work stream is how do we rapidly scale the amount of content or whatever it is that we're doing in order to address these pain points. And that's the discipline or the function that needs to be created inside the organization. In smaller companies, you may not have all the resources to do that. So to address that resource gap, I would just say is that you as the marketing leader need to kind of do this work on your own time separately, and then slowly think about how do you scale this over time. So it might just start with a couple of things per month, and eventually you have actually a team supporting that work, or you overhaul your old stuff once this new message starts to resonate. Similar question: when would you advise building the ecosystem versus doing more of the fundamentals? I would say always do fundamental stuff first. Always. If you don't have the foundational elements done, it's hard to convert people when they come to your site. So definitely do that work, but do it fast. Is my advice. Do it as quickly as possible or get it to good enough so that you can do more of this work. Because as long as your core assets are good enough, you're not going to sway the conversion rate significantly. This is an example of a mistake that I see marketers make, is like your homepage or your email sequence or your win rates, like these things are not going to go from like 5% to 20%. They might go from 5 to 6% or 6 to 7%. And in some cases, that's a very meaningful difference. So yes, it's worth optimizing. But in a lot of cases, it's like a cosmetic increase, whereas that time and effort could be spent into building more of this iconic positioning that we're talking about. So I'd much rather you invest time into those things. But again, make sure the foundational things are done first. Peter asks, how often should you be reviewing your positioning investment? Also a great question. And what are some metrics you should be closely monitoring to ensure that your positioning is hitting the mark? So metrics wise, your business will tell you, right? Like the way to measure product marketing is just to look at general metrics like pipeline, revenue, retention, expansion, etc. Like, are we actually resonating? Is it actually our referral rates going up? Is our NPS high? Are customers satisfied? Because if customers aren't satisfied, one of the reasons could be that the expectations you set on the front end are not matched to what you're actually delivering, right? So things like that will give you a general idea. And then you can make a decision based on that. If those metrics are doing well, I wouldn't overhaul your product marketing. And again, I come back to this framework is if your metrics are doing well, odds are all of this stuff is actually in a pretty good place. But the more important stuff of like building this distinct position in the marketplace may not be done. And a quick test on that is like to really ask yourself, like, are you in your ICP's mind, are you looked at differently than everybody else? That's more of a subjective question, but like, are you tagged a lot? Are you mentioned a lot? Are they discussing you at like a party? Like, what in what way are you coming up inside conversations with customers and how often? And my guess is it wouldn't be that often for most companies. And so that I would focus on that more, assuming some of those global metrics are in a good place. Peter, I hope that helps on that one. Other questions? I see that's pretty much all the ones in the chat, but happy to address more. We have some more time here. Any tools/techniques in particular that you recommend for message testing? Yeah, Winter. Yeah, I've seen this stuff. I think, whatever tool helps you talk to end customers and really understand their pain points. Like it doesn't even have to be a tool. Like it could be going to an event where you can actually hear their pain points and understand them. Like I'll give you one example. We sell to CEOs and PE investors, but recently we got a couple of engagements from CFOs, and it occurred to me that right, like because companies are not hitting their targets as much, CFOs are trying to find efficiencies, and so we should be talking to CFOs more. And so I need to hang out with more CFOs because our messaging currently does not talk to CFOs, right? So that becomes a thing to update because it's an opportunity. And then at the same time, like there are pain points that CFOs are currently experiencing that I may not even be aware of that I need to talk to them about. So use whatever tools, use customer or voice of customer firms if you need to, or surveys. Like I'll just say one thing on hearing from your ICP. You probably already have a lot of this. So I'll give you some places to look already. Go to every review site and just export all the reviews into something and analyze it. That's an easy one. Go to all your NPS surveys and look through all the responses and try to categorize them. Number 3, go through all your help tickets and look at complaints or issues people are having with your product and try to categorize those. Like go to win-loss analysis inside your Salesforce and look at why you're not winning deals from your ICP. All of this data exists. And I'll tell you that if you look at, for example, 5-star reviews on Capterra or G2 on why people are saying they chose your software, you could probably just steal the first line and put it on your homepage title tag and you're good, like your headline, right? And I think looking at some of those existing data, you don't need to actually go and do more research. The research is already kind of done for you. Lisa asks, if you know your product is lagging in features from the top competitors, How can you properly message to position yourself? Yes, that's a great question as well. See, okay, you in almost all cases, you're not going to be the market leader. Yeah, once in a while you might be the behemoth in the room, but in general, you're not the market leader in whatever category you're in. But another way to kind of think about it is it's not just one category. So um, if we just were to look at CRM tools, Salesforce is the market leader, HubSpot is the market leader. How are we ever going to compete with them? But we have done tons of work with companies that offer CRM solutions to different industries. Like we work with a market leader in construction management software. We work with a market leader in professional services automation. They all have CRMs. They all have the same features. And so it's more about thinking about the slice of market where you're the market leader and then messaging to that slice of the market. You're going to find way more efficiency there for your business. And so what are those different, because if you try to compete in the more general market, you're likely going to lose and your win rates will tell you that. So that's one way, is to which slice of market are you going to win in and focusing on that. And the second thing is that let's say using this slide as our option is, let's say the customer only has 3 pain points and your software solves 2 of them, but your competitor solves 3 of them. So you're at a disadvantage. But I'm a big fan of game theory stuff, so and board games and just strategic games in general. And so if your competitor has 1 more pain point that they address, you're at a disadvantage. But if you address 5 to 10 more pain points up here, they're at a disadvantage because you understand them better. You have a better connection. You're able to provide value in more ways. They will choose you, which seems counterintuitive because you're like, well, what if I don't offer, let's say you're like a e-commerce platform that it's like a checkout page type of solution and you don't have email automation. The customer will gravitate to someone that solves these pain points. And then for that email solution, they might plug in Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever to solve that if they resonate with what you have to say. Once, and I'm saying that's the caveat, is you've established iconic position in the marketplace. The buying decision is not just a purely rational, like if you've seen these feature parity charts, which are kind of meaningless, but because all these management consulting firms do it, which is say, oh, solution A, solution B, solution C, and solution A has this feature fully, this feature half, this feature 2/3, and other solutions are maybe the opposite of that. That is not how a buying decision is made. The buying decision is made by who do I connect with, who understands me, right? And so if you do more of this work, they're going to feel more understood and they're more likely to buy from you and they will find workarounds. That's not to say that we want to sell them something that they don't need. It's more that this stuff is also part of the product because over time, the pain points that you solve and how you solve them will also change because again, coming back to product marketing is everything. Like it's going to connect to what features you prioritize. So it kind of has to work hand in hand and it will change over time, but it requires that investment. That was a great question. Building a messaging house slide. Could this be a template for homepage messaging and content? How deep would you? Yeah, 100%. Like you could easily turn this into a homepage. Like this is your above the fold. These are the 3 main benefits, and you kind of go into all of these areas, and you have testimonials for how you solve each of these. Yeah, easily. So I always think that so my original background is I come from the internet marketing world, like old school, like 12 years ago, where you would have like a 30-page sales letter that you used to sell something online, like an online course or something. In general, I'm a fan of longer homepages. And I know the cool thing right now is like if you go on like the Slack website or something, or like Stripe, if you go to stripe.com, like they'll have a very short homepage. And I'm a fan of much longer homepages because if you look at your Google Analytics on something like Stripe here, I can almost guarantee like the number of visitors that come to this page versus like, let's say invoicing or something, it's like 10x. And the deeper you go, the less likely it is that they saw that you are actually by SaaS for Stripe. Like this page is barely getting seen compared to their homepage. So I would go as deep as possible to put as much value as possible on the homepage and use this as a starting point, but go a lot deeper. Peter asks, assuming you've done a solid job with TAM and segmentation and ICP vertical segments you want to go after, how do you prioritize the pain points that you want to solve for? Great question. What criteria should be incorporating into this decision? Yeah, so I would, instead of thinking about it like in terms of competition and product capabilities, I would start with which slice of the market are you the market leader? And what is the most important feature to that slice of the market? So that could be something completely different than what you are best in class for necessarily, but in general, it does align. But it will definitely be different than what your competitors are doing. So for one competitor, it might be project management is a thing that they have to lead with. And for another competitor, it might be time tracking and utilization that they need to lead with. So really leaning into that slice of the market where you would be considered a market leader. And there might be 3 to 5 of those things, and it will be case dependent. That being said, you will still come up against competition in those cases. And so again, coming back to this stuff, like you want to figure out that slice, and then you want to layer on the stuff on top, and that separates you from those folks as well.
Shiv, just to follow up to that, when you say slice, is vertical like typically a good way to look at it, or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think vertical is good, but I would take it a step further than that. Like I would be very, very specific. Like um we work with engineering firms that have at least 10 employees and working on 50 projects a year that specialize in building bridges. Like if you get that specific, now you can really nail the messaging more so than we help engineering firms. There's tons of people that help engineering firms. So the better you are at that, and then like let's say it is they build bridges, like we can now have a ton of messaging around what's the best way to run a project that involves building a bridge, as a basic example, which a lot of companies don't do. They'll stop at the engineering firm, and that looks like this, and then that looks more commoditized. So. By the way, I also want to point out this is a lot of content work. So it sounds great in theory, but there's only one of us or 2 of us or 3 of us in general that are doing this kind of work. So it has to be built over time. Even our business, like there's so much work that we can do from a product marketing standpoint. This site that our homepage or whatever is nowhere close to how I would want it to look eventually. We're getting there, but there's just so much more content that we need. So I don't want to make it seem like this is easy to do, but it is something that you invest into slowly, and then you kind of wake up and you have all of this content. Like, and I'll again just using our own example, initially started with one drawing, and I would just wake up every morning and create one drawing. Now we have like 200 of them. Initially started with writing one chapter. Now we have 2 books, like or 3 books if you want to call the drawings one a book. And even this course, like building this content, like I never had this slide before I made the deck for this module, right? But now this slide is something that I can use every time I speak somewhere. And so it just gets created over time. And whatever that is for your business, if you have a ton of folks, or if you're a company like Stripe, you have a lot of people that can do it. But even still, it takes time because it requires more critical thinking. You actually have to sit and think about the market and pain points and how to best serve them. And like it requires creativity more than just like a formula. Because I'm sure you guys have seen these things like, what's the right formula for a homepage? What's the right formula for a solutions page? Like everybody has a template that you can probably adopt. But this work it requires critical thinking and creativity. So it's heavy work, but slowly over time, you're going to see that the market hears that message. I can't tell you how many times I jump on a sales call and the person already has my book on their desk and is halfway through it, right? So that's a dividend that pays off now, but it took like 3-4 years to get to that point. So, other questions?
Shiv, I have another question about navigating the change in an organization that's not structured this way with product marketing at the hub. Any tips or suggestions on how to bring product or sales along if traditionally the business has been more, let's say, like product decides what to build or sales says this is what we're doing now based on, what we're hearing from customers.
This another great question. This is a painful process. I have lived it. You you almost need to embark on like an internal education program to help people understand the value of what you're doing or what you're bringing to the table. And not everybody wants to hear it. So it's like almost like a form of internal politics that needs to take place. You need to get allies and you need to explain to the CEO and why this is important and the CMO and CFO and product leaders. Like, for example, one of the most common points of pushback you'll get is from products saying, we don't need your input on the product roadmap, or we already have a product roadmap, or we're already busy for the next few quarters. And so the more data and customer research you can bring, the easier that gets. That's probably the fastest way to get people to take you seriously. So some of the business level metrics that we've talked about over the last few weeks, plus the customer data stuff that we just talked about as part of the Q&A, like NPS scores or the CSAT responses or whatever is being publicly shared on places like Capterra, like organizing that and saying, here's what we're hearing from customers, here's what's valuable, here's the analysis we did, here are the features we need, I can then sell it this way, here's the revenue opportunity. That helps get buy-in a lot more. But even still, you need an organization that's open to hearing that. If you run into too many roadblocks, like when I say too many, I mean like extensive to the point where like you actually cannot operate product marketing in this way for an extended period of time, then it's probably not the right organization, because the organization does need to get it to some degree. Alex asks, how do you attribute to the book as an example? Is it more strategic, or are you doing, there's zero attribution modeling for the book. It's based on, I mean, we look at book sales monthly and stuff like that, but when I wrote it, the book for me was a product marketing play. This book was not written to sell copies. Like almost nobody searches for post-acquisition marketing on Amazon, like as a search term. It's grown because of the product market fit to who I'm selling to. And for me, it's just like, how often do I get on a sales call and somebody has read the book or has ordered the book, or how often does it help me get on stage and things like that. So yeah, we don't actively measure it, but I have a pretty good feeling, like it's like 30% of sales calls have the person reading the book, maybe more. So cool. Okay, this was great, guys. We will make sure the recording is up and everything is shared. Reminder, tomorrow is the demand gen session, and I'll just say, just think about this proxy company in your market, or not in your market, excuse me, a proxy company for your company, and how you can think about product marketing the way maybe they are, as a way to kind of, as a vision for where you're trying to get to. And then outside of that, we'll see you guys tomorrow.